Good evening, everyone. Okay, here's the count tonight, and it is not good. 51 homes, 3 businesses, and approximately 80 outbuildings.
That is the destruction of the McKinley fire so far. Now, today, the Mat-Su Borough officially notified people about their destroyed property. Channel 2's Grant Robinson and Derek Minnemeyer were each at one of the shelters that were set up for evacuees, and they share how the victims are handling the news. Grant Robinson, what's going on?
Well, Mike, Rebecca, of the more than 50 families who lost their home, about half of them have already found short-term housing with friends or family. That's according to the Mat-Su Borough EMS Director Ken Barkley. But planning for what's ahead is difficult because it's hard to keep up with what's happening right now. There's nothing left of Ashley Johnson's home on mile 87.5 of the park's highway.
Our 5 dogs and 2 cats and geese and chickens are what we could grab.
Friends who had checked on her property across from Camp Casville told her that some chickens she had left behind survived, but that her home was destroyed. Then Friday morning, the Mat-Su Borough confirmed that news.
You can totally tell that they definitely feel for us. We went in there, we sat down. He showed me the pictures. You could tell he was even hesitant to show me just because it is devastating to see. You see everything you own just gone. Just gone.
Like many of the fire's victims, Johnson didn't have insurance. She wants to rebuild, but right now she's still not even allowed back onto the property because it's still an active firefighting scene. Until fire crews allow re-entry, the only path forward is walked with small steps.
One day at a time, by the grace of God and with my friends. This community's been amazing. They've come together, helped us get clothes, helped us get blankets, helped us get a place even to stay in, and it's just been amazing with that aspect. Granted, it's heart-wrenching.
It is.
At the same time, but, at least have my chickens and I have my animals and my family, and I know I have that, so that's a plus.
Now, Johnson and other victims I spoke with say they plan to rebuild, but that's an issue for down the road. Right now, this is still an active fire, and just today, a level 2 evacuation notice was extended for miles 79 to 81.5 of the park's highway. That means if you live in that area, you should be ready to evacuate within a 5 minutes notice.
With over 100,000 acres burning in south central Alaska, fire officials have called in help from the lower 48.
We really do need the help. This is an unprecedented event.
At the Division of Forestry building in Palmer, firefighters pack their bags to hit blazes threatening large swaths of south central. Division of Forestry officials brief on the latest details, plan of approach, and how to utilize over 200 firefighters who came up from Washington to help.
We've got a lot to clean up and get us back to normal here.
C says the Deshka fire off Nancy Lake Parkway is burning around 2,000 acres, while the McKinley fire is holding around 3,000.
I was loaded and ready to go. I just needed to load my dogs and my cats, and I'm out of there.
Shelley Mosley and Miranda Bennett are 2 of 98 total evacuees from the McKinley fire. They're currently being sheltered at the Menard Center in Wasilla.
I've been through a lot. I'm born and raised Alaskan. This was a doozy.
We are tough Alaska chicks. Let's just put it that way.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Seeing these fires from the airs really makes it easier to understand how much the fire behavior has changed since this weekend. Now, right now, both of these fires are growing at much slower paces. Fire leaders said they had little growth yesterday and overnight. They're growing at a creeping pace along the ground, burning grasses and into the duff layer. Now, the Deshka fire, a lot of folks are concerned about that because it's very close to cabins near Red Shirt Lake. But right now, the Division of Forestry says no buildings have been burned. Tomorrow morning, a Type 2 incident management team will take over that fire. Now, as for the McKinley fire, it was burning with more pockets that we could see, and they were definitely burning more intensely than the Deshka fire. They haven't finished the damage assessment for the McKinley fire, but they have updated the estimated number so far of buildings burned to around 80. We were able to drive north from Willow on the park's highway as far as Hidden Hills Road out to the Sheep Creek. As soon as we passed the Kashwitna River, we could see smoke on both sides of the highway very close to the road, billowing up in small pockets. Then once we got closer to Caswell, we could start to see the damage from this fire. The main building at Caswell Supply is gone. A few others on the property were also burned, while others seem to be spared. And that's another thing that we saw along this drive. Parts of property can be completely burned, while others seem to be untouched. You can see that from driving along the highway, but what's harder to see are all the hazards that are in place here. The fire burned the roots of these trees, and every couple of minutes we're hearing a big snap and then a crash, and that's a tree falling down. There are also areas with propane and natural gas tanks, and those pose an explosive risk. And areas that may look to be totally burnt out could be ash pits. You step in those and you are going to burn yourself. Those hazards are the reasons fire managers ask that people do not enter the area once they've evacuated. Earlier in the day, the fire marshal said it might be another 2 days before the borough finishes its full damage assessment and then notifies homeowners that lost their property. Reporting in Caswell, Grant Robinson, Channel 2 News.
It's easier than ever to hear the wind blowing through the trees at the Mat-Su RV park. Everyone is still gone after they evacuated from the McKinley fire. Everyone except for the owner.
We would just be greeting guests, checking them in, visiting with them, doing maintenance around the property.
Those were the chores Colin and his mother were in charge of until the fire drew closer.
Like at the end of the road right there.
They thought the breeze was working in their favor.
Just didn't really give it any more thought, plus the wind was still pushing straight south.
And then it shifted.
Oh no, this is not good. Fire here in the front. It's coming through the back. Might be our last video of the place.
Within a few minutes, Colin, his mother, their puppy, their papers were out of there.
There's our sign. There's the fire trucks backing out.
The wind continued to blow strong that day.
Mile 92 heading south, and you can see the haze. Let's see what we find.
Colin came back the day after.
Well, the sign is still there. Oh no, no, no. Oh no.
He realized just how strong the winds of change were.
Everything's gone.
You still had in the back of your mind that maybe it went by you and maybe something survived, but it just didn't make it. So, it was kind of hard on that.
The bathrooms, the office, his mother's home.
This is about one of the few structures that survived. This is where we had our pump house, which supplied all the water, and you can see all the equipment in here.
So what's next?
Plan is to rebuild. We really want to rebuild and do it a little bit nicer.
With nothing occupying the park but the breeze, Colin works through his insurance and damages. But just like the winds shift and change, Colin expects soon, so will his park.
Just keep thinking that it's going to be better and nicer when we redo it. So, that's the saving grace of it.
For the Morning Edition, I'm Sammy Solina.
A Wasilla man weekending near mile 90 of the park's highway took pictures of a tree and the power line had toppled into. Channel 2 investigative reporter Jill Burke has more on the story. Jill?
Mike and Rebecca, trees on power lines has certainly been a suspected cause, though at this time is unconfirmed, and the origin for the McKinley fire remains under investigation. When you see, though, what Chris Hines saw, you'll see just how easily it can happen. We've seen what the McKinley fire grew into. Roaring flames, heartbreaking loss, everyone thankful no one was hurt. But what about the fire's early beginnings? Late Saturday afternoon, as winds blew through the area's unrelenting dry conditions, Chris Hines thinks he may have stumbled across them.
And I happened upon a tree that had knocked a power line down onto the ground. And when I first arrived, the fire was just smoldering there at the line right at the ground there, and it was smoking.
He snapped a picture, then, with the line broken and arcing, backed away.
And then right after I got off the phone with 911 is when I took that picture of it flaring up on a tree, and that's kind of when the fire really got going.
Do you think that that's the power line that kind of ignited the bigger fire, or just one of many that contributed?
I'm no investigator, so I can't tell you. I can say that right after I called 911 and after I noticed that the fire was burning in that spot, that's when the helicopter showed up and they started dropping water on it, and that's 45 minutes later the police evacuated us, and then that's when the McKinley fire started.
The official word, the fire is human caused, which could mean a tree into a power line, but it's still under investigation.
We had significant wind incidents throughout our service territory on that day, and several were trees falling into lines.
The pictures Hines took clearly show a well-groomed utility easement bordered by tall birch and spindly spruce.
Our traditional distribution easement is about 30 feet, and that again is to decrease impact to members and decrease impact of our lines. So that's usually 15 feet on either side.
That means any tree bordering the easement that's taller than 15 feet has the potential to be a problem, including birch trees, which it appears this one is. And when Hines saw it, MEA's Julie Esty says he did what they want everyone to do.
First, we just ask our members not to go near any sort of tree in the line, to call 911 or our dispatch center, because anything that's touching our line can be energized. The ground around that can be energized, so please do not go through that.
Hines has shared his pictures with fire investigators, and his sequence shows how quickly the fire grew. Reminders of how quickly life can change.
I have friends that have lost their entire homes and all their belongings. We were really blessed to say that we haven't lost anything, but my heart goes out to them. It's absolutely the most tragic thing I can think of.
And Hines told us just a few hundred yards north of the fire's edge is where his property is. Meanwhile, MEA has not been able to get into areas to assess things firsthand. Its crews are assisting firefighters however they can.
If only the rain fell sooner. Then Al Fisher might not be living in a campsite.
Well, I've got an 8x14 tent in this 12x14 awning, which a neighbor referred to as a redneck man cave because I have a recliner in it.
Not much for entertainment here, which is fine for Al because when the rain lets up, it's back to work.
Oh. It was quiet and peaceful. It kind of looks like a war zone now.
Missing his home of 40 years, his dog of 13.
When the last time I saw her, she was underneath the house. There was like firemen all around the house, and she was freaking out. She was on her last legs, so.
His cars, his beloved tools.
Before the fire, I'd be using a battery-operated drill right now.
The McKinley fire took what he had, so he's rebuilding by hand, just like he did with his cabin before. He has no choice. He has no insurance.
None whatsoever, no.
He said that's the case for many of his neighbors as well. But this Vietnam veteran is resilient. He has to be, with fall right around the corner.
This is the old cabin, the remnants of it.
A neighbor dug this pit for him. Fire crews check up on him daily.
And I've had friends offer to help. I've got a lot of friends here.
But rain is falling and winter is coming, so he'll find a way. For Channel 2 News, I'm Sammy Solina.
Starting this Wednesday, Mat-Su residents that were impacted by the McKinley fire will be able to apply for disaster assistance at either the United Methodist Church in Willow or the Upper Susitna Senior Center. But up until now, it's been up to an outpouring of community support to keep the affected families afloat.
Mile marker 87 of the Parks Highway. Before the McKinley fire, this was the site of Camp Caswell. Nearby, the Roberts family home. Now just a pile of ashes. Like so many other families, they're now leaning on the community as they try to replace their possessions.
Everything we had is gone, and we knew it when we were leaving. It's heart-wrenching, it's devastating. I mean, you're sitting there looking at everything you worked for your whole life.
While there are volunteers stepping in to provide clothes and other essentials for those impacted by the fire,
washcloth and stuff like that,
some of the things lost to the flames can't be replaced.
There's a tote with a bunch of pictures in it. I wish we would have grabbed that just because my papa died, and I had pictures of him in it.
One major focus right now is rebuilding with just months before winter arrives. Donation centers like the Wasilla Community Church say that items like clothing and children's toys are plentiful, but things that are still in high demand include tools, winter gear, and pet food and supplies. Reporting near Willow, I'm Hank Davis for Channel 2 News.
There was so much hope as I came up and saw the neighbors' houses were still there.
A little ways back from the Parks Highway.
It's easy to see what the McKinley fire left behind.
I always try to prepare myself and be a step ahead, but something like this you can never prepare for.
Or in this case, took with it.
It's just unbelievable when I came up the driveway and just tried to look where the house was supposed to be, and there was just nothing there. It's what's left of a nail gun. It's what was a two-story building and structures was now only about 1.5 feet, 2 feet tall of metal debris.
For the Finch family, this was once a home, a decade in the making.
I grew up in Detroit, and I came out here on a vacation. Every year after that, I would save up, and 2 weeks to a month, I would come up here and, you know, clear the land, and put the foundation in, and it just one step at a time, and it took 10 years before, you know, all the doors and windows were in.
Along with its inhabitants, husband David, wife Christy, and 5 dogs, the family welcome sign is one of the few things still standing.
You never realize, you know, you take for granted almost, you know, how much your home means to you until it's gone.
There is little left here anymore. No house, no home.
It was a dream home, and you know it was small, but we were happy just to you know, to have this place that I put together with my own hands.
And only the ashen remnants of family heirlooms, no longer glimmering, but still treasured.
These are what I was given when I was born, in my father's watches and my father's stuff. This is all that's left of my memories out of the house. You know, family heirlooms that of grandparents and parents that are no longer with us anymore.
In slightly better condition, a ring belonging to David's late wife, who passed after a battle with cancer. Her ashes disappeared with the fire.
A lot of the stuff we won't be able to fix or replace, but this, I'm hoping that at least we could have a little something. We'll just take this and clean it up, and maybe we can smile and look at it and, you know, think positive.
But despite the many twists and turns and losing their home for the holidays and the regular days too, they're pushing on.
I know that in a drop of a dime that I could call and have people willing, when and if we get the material, you know, they will be here to help, and we will rebuild.
We ain't going somewhere else, you know. We're staying in this area here. We're gonna rebuild here. It's gonna take a while before it looks the same and a lot of work, but you know, we're up to it.
This could have just as easily been us. So we want to make sure we do what we can.
The days are getting shorter and the nights colder in Alaska. Rush, rush to beat winter as it makes its way down the mountains. Along the park's highway, scorched earth, remnants of the McKinley fire.
If you look around, it kind of answers the question of why we're here. So it's pretty devastating.
Those lucky enough to have dodged the flames, helping victims prepare for what comes next.
We're building this addition on the side of this fifth wheel for these folks to be able to, you know, have a wood stove and be able to get through the winter a little easier.
Mike Stitt is a full-time contractor building 3 different makeshift shelters like this one at no charge.
You know, I think we all should have a servant's heart. That's, you know, a part of being a Christian and doing right with our neighbor and loving our neighbor as ourselves.
This will house a family of 4 through the winter. All of the labor and material is donated.
Yeah, there's no money in this for us at all.
That would be devastating if it was us. So I'm glad there's people here to help them.
And especially people that, you know, didn't have insurance and doesn't have the capabilities of rebuilding like others that have the money and can. And so it means a lot to be able to help somebody that needs help. And, you know, there might be a day and time when I need help, and I would hate to think that I had my nose stuck up in the air and didn't want to help anybody else.
Reporting in the aftermath of the McKinley fire, Derek Minnemeyer, Channel 2 News.